A very good morning to all of you, or a very good afternoon for the people listening and watching us from out of the Netherlands. My name is Peggy. I'm the Managing Director of Dutchem, and I'm also your host of today of this webinar, exclusively giving some insight and highlights of a survey that we have been conducted among our Dutch members here in Brazil. A comprehensive survey, I think we can say, and we would like to give you a bit of the highlights of the whole survey, and obviously you will get the survey in a while, the whole full report after this webinar. I see that still a lot of people are coming in, so I would say have a seat, relax, and if maybe a few practical things before we go live with this webinar. If this is a webinar format, so we cannot see you, obviously we can communicate with you, but this goes through the web to the web chat, the chat box. So if you have questions, if you have remarks and comments, please let us know during the session. We will love to pick up your questions through the chat box and ask them to our panelists. So no worry about that. If you are for one reason or another just kicked out of the webinar, you have an issue with the connection, no worries as well, because just click again on the link and then you will enter easily again in this webinar. So I think having said that, we can officially start. We have already a lot of people joining us from both the Netherlands, I see, and from Brazil. So I think we are ready to start. First of all, allow me to thank you, our colleagues from the Netherlands Economic Network here in Brazil and the people of the embassy who have been conducted this survey in close collaboration with Dutchem. I think it's a great initiative to get a bit of a feeling of how our Dutch companies are looking to the economical situation, the investment climate, and obviously also in terms of the future. And I think this is a very interesting report. So I would like to thank, in the first place, all the people on the embassy and also especially Paul van der Locht, our agricultural counselor, who has been the driving force behind this survey. Now, first of all, allow me to welcome, to do an introduction of the survey. Let me see if Afke Mulder, our Deputy Ambassador and also our head of Economical Network here in Brazil. Afke, a very good morning to you. You're logging in from the Netherlands, I think.
Yes, hello Peggy, thank you so much and good morning indeed for me. We're talking about doing business in Brazil and I am in the Netherlands in November right now. So I think the reason behind the reason why so many Dutch companies love to do business in Brazil might be the weather, but okay, that did not come out of the survey. But anyway, it's a great pleasure to be here. My name is Afke Mulder. I'm the Deputy Ambassador of the Netherlands in Brazil. And as Peggy said, also heading the economic cluster. As the Netherlands Economic Network, we're represented in 5 locations throughout Brazil. So Brasilia, São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Belo Horizonte, Porto Alegre. And we're here to assist you. So for us, it's very interesting to see the results of the survey and to do this work, of course, because it gives us a perspective of what the Dutch companies as a group perceive when doing business in Brazil. So why is that important? Well, for you, but also for us. I think, first of all, the Netherlands, the Dutch companies do have a sizable presence in Brazil. It's a group that matters. Of course, in the grand scheme of things, it's a small percentage, but it is a group that is contributing to employment and business, but also, and that's something I'm particularly proud of, having a lead role in innovative, sustainable solutions. So the higher quality and what I like to call the markets of the future. And that's something that we're particularly cooperating on as well. So individually, we have a lot of connections with all of you, with many companies. But for us, it's also very important to have this group picture, because something else that we do besides trade facilitation, which is more specific on certain sectors where we do trade missions or market survey, is of course also public policy. We are in discussions with the federal government or the state governments on overall issues, for example, now in context of the G20, which also evolves quite often about the business climate, or we get questions like, what do Dutch companies need to invest even more in energy transition, or whatever the topic is. So of course, for us, for that objective, it's also very good to, stay in close touch and to understand what the Dutch business community in Brazil is experiencing. So our colleagues of Perspective will take the floor to go into detail of all the findings. I think they're very interesting. Overall, they match with the picture that we're already working with. It's an optimistic picture. The companies that answered do see the market as of growing importance, with a lot of opportunities and a future potential, a profitable market as well. Of course, not without its challenges. I think the Custo Brasil is something that we have been talking about a lot, and it helps to have that picture even more clearer. Of course, on bureaucracy and taxes, we know that, but the nuances are, I think, very relevant. But as said, I'm giving the floor to Perspective to take us into detail on that. I do hope from today that we will learn even more from each other and see this perspective and discuss. And I would like to ask you to also keep feeding us as an economic network via Dutchem or directly us to help us help you better, because that's what we're here for. You to keep be successful and have this leading role in the private sector in Brazil, and we're here to assist you. So with that, I would like to hand back the floor. Thank you so much, Peggy, and let's hear more about what the outcomes are of the survey. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Afke, for your introduction and for being with us, especially from out of the Netherlands. Much appreciated. I think indeed it's an ongoing thing. It's a survey, and that gives us one picture at a certain moment. But of course, as you say, we continue, or we hope to continue, have some feedback from our companies and hear what they think along the way. So much open to receive all these comments and feedbacks, also from the people in the room. In the meantime, a lot of more people joined us for this webinar. Also for the newcomers, a warm welcome to this webinar. Have a seat and relax, because we are giving the floor indeed to the guys of Perspective, but I also would like to introduce already the two additional guests that we also have. We have two people from Perspective that I give the floor to in a second, but we also have Rinus Donkers, who is the director of the Heus for Latin America, and we also have Joris Steinberg, managing director for Atlas Professionals for LATAM. I think they're hiding somewhere, but they're also there already in our panel, I think. Rinus and Joris. They're still a little bit hiding. Good morning. Good morning to you. Hi, Rinus. Yes, good morning.
We are there. We are there.
You're there. You're there. Lucky. First of all, guys, a very warm welcome also from our side, on behalf also of the audience that we have with us today. I would like to give the floor to you after the presentation. So, because you have been participating to this survey as well, and I think it's very interesting to give a little bit of the highlights and insights from your side during this live webinar. So if that's okay for you, I'm going to give the floor in the first stage to our colleagues from the agency Perspective. Perspective is an agency that does business design and design research. And I'm happy to welcome Renske Verweijen, who is the business designer, and Jaela van One, who is researcher at Perspective. So I think both of you girls, you should be with us somewhere hidden as well. And first we get the slides, and then we get, if all goes good, Renske and Jaela. Good morning, girls.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Here we are.
Here we are, yes. Here we are,
It's always a little bit spooky, right? With these kind of webinars. We see each other, we don't see each other.
Happy to talk you through the results of the business survey we've conducted in Brazil. And perhaps you were expecting some guys, but we're women over here. We're actually in our office in Amsterdam. That's where we're located, and we'll just take you through it.
Yeah, we will not ask you about the weather, I think, because that will be not such a positive perspective.
We're still mentally adjusting from the summer, and it's a little bit cold.
Super. Hey, but let's not talk about the weather, but about the survey. Girls, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yes, we're going to take you through the results from this online survey. Sadly, it was online, so we didn't go to the lovely weather there. Just a short comeback. So the objective of the study was to keep up to date, to remain up to date with the challenges and opportunities for Dutch companies who operate in Brazil. And the reason for that was to better align the services to the needs of the Dutch business community in Brazil, done by the economic network in Brazil. We've sent out the survey to more than 200 respondents, to more than 200 contacts, and the response was very high. More than almost 66 respondents filled in the survey, and it means a response of 31%. So this is really good, and it means that the results give a really good impression of what the target group really thinks. So let's look at who really filled in the survey. Some of you are already looking at this webinar right now, so let's see who are the ones on the other side of the screen. 3 out of 5 have their headquarters located in São Paulo. 1/3 have 2 or more establishments in Brazil. So there are a lot of companies or businesses who have more establishments than just one. Have a lot of experience in Brazil. So 3 out of 5 have more than 10 years of experience even. Almost all respondents serve business to business. We'll just look in more depth in a few seconds. And not to mention, agri-food is the most important sector for Dutch companies who operate in Brazil. So just a few highlights. Also worth mentioning is that Brazil is the most served market, followed by South America. And when you look at small companies, they serve the Dutch market more often. So there's a lot of information on the slide, and I'm just picking out the highlights.
Maybe good to mention that we look sometimes at the differences between small companies and large companies. And with small companies, we mean companies with up to 10 employees, 50 employees, and bigger companies are 50 employees or more.
Yeah. And when you're looking more closely at the years, so in the left corner of the years that companies are active in Brazil, we can conclude that most companies are quite established. So they are really already for a long time in Brazil. I already mentioned the sectors, and here you can see them in more in depth. So agri-food is a very important sector, and they're distributed over a few subsectors actually. So dairy, livestock, horticulture, and one other. It's really small over here, so I'm looking in my memory, but it's agri-food, more related. More the other parts. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, then now we know who filled out the questionnaire, and it's time to have a look at the first results. And the first results are about how they view Brazilian and the global market, and the reasons for those companies to operate in Brazil. And unfortunately, we did not ask about the weather, so maybe that's the main reason we have overlooked here. But for almost all companies, the main reason to operate in Brazil is the size of Brazil's market. And also a very important reason to be present in Brazil is for future development. So there's already, you can tell here, there's like an outlook on the future for all those companies that are present in Brazil. This is something we will see further on in the results also. When we look at how profitable those companies are, as was mentioned, I think in our introduction already, is that the outlook is quite positive. And you can also see that reflected in these numbers here. More than half of the Brazilian companies were at least profitable, and some even very profitable doing their business in Brazil. Small businesses suffered a loss a bit more often than large companies. So there's a bit of a difference between the smaller and the larger companies. And almost the same numbers go for the way the Brazil activities contribute to the global performance of the companies, which is also quite positive for at least half or even more than half of the Brazilian establishments. So overall, quite a positive experience for most companies from being present in Brazil. So it should not be a big surprise that most of the companies plan to invest in the future and to stay present in Brazil and be active in Brazil and really want to be there and want to invest in their presence. Yeah, I think we can go to the next slide. This is maybe this question is maybe a bit different than the questions before we had, but one question we asked is do companies have a sustainability strategy for Brazil? And I think we found it, I don't know if it's quite striking. I don't know what really is normal around this, but most of them do not have a sustainability strategy, especially for Brazil. They can mention some elements they would like. No, only 1 out of 10, 1 out of 8 even, no, 1 out of 10, they have something specifically for Brazil, and that's most about, for example, nutrition, safety of food, circular economy, stuff like that. So the answers that you see here on the right hand are the answers given by the respondents. Of course, it's not all sunshine and happy feelings, and experience. Those companies do experience some barriers when doing business in Brazil, and we go into that now. Overall, they have a feel that the business climate is quite stable, and the most of them do not feel that almost 2/3 do not feel that the business climate has become more or less restrictive in the last couple of years. So it's quite stable in their views. But when we look at the barriers they experience, this is top 5 in the report. You will find more barriers, but those are the barriers that you see here are the most experienced. That the most barriers are around operational things, things like bureaucracy, high taxes, procedures and tariffs, things like that. And I think the bureaucracy and the tariffs really stand out as the most experienced barriers. Maybe one striking thing is that small businesses also mention transparency of Brazilian legalization. Sorry, that's a bit of a tongue breaker for me. More often than larger companies, and also licensing procedures make the top 5 for the small businesses. Maybe because they do not have a personnel on hand less often than larger companies that can really dive into these kind of things. How do they view the Netherlands economic network in Brazil? Well, overall, they are quite positive about this network. Over 3/4 find the existence of the Dutch economic network important. So they really feel that there is a place for a network like this, and they really have a use for this. And there are only like a few responses that do not think that it is of any importance. We asked them in an open way, what are your expectations of assistance and guidance of the Dutch economic network? And there you can see that a lot of answers evolve around meeting other businesses, networking, and knowledge about the Brazilian market, really helping them to get even a better foot on the ground in Brazil. And this is also reflected. We asked them about all the different services the Dutch Economic Network provides, if they have used them in the past and their intent to use them in the future. Here we're just showing the intent for using it in the future. In the report, you will find all the other numbers of the usage in the past. But as you can see, that most of the services they intend to use in the future are all around trade, investment, promotion, services that help them understand the Brazilian market better. So again, anything that can help them with getting a better foot on the ground in Brazil. When we look at the way they want to stay in contact with the Dutch Economic Network, now it's on the third place. There are seminars like this, so it's really nice to be part of one of these things we've written down in the report. But by far the most preferred way to stay in contact with the network are the networking events. But also the newsletter and seminars like this one are preferred ways to stay in contact with the economic network.
So this was already a quick summarize of our findings, and you'll find the more in-depth findings in the report you'll receive later. But just summarize it real quick at the end. Our main takeaway is that the Dutch companies are really positive about doing business in Brazil. For the current climate now, but also when looking at the future, they want to invest in their presence in Brazil, and the Brazilian establishments are already very profitable and contribute positively to the worldwide performance. So this is really great to find. And however, there are still challenges, of course, in every climate there are, and they're mostly for Brazil around operational barriers and rules and regulations. We've just covered some of the top barriers, and in the report you find more in-depth barriers. Overall, the level of restrictiveness is experienced as quite stable over the last couple of 2 years. And still, you want to understand the market even better, and networking in that is also very important to help with the current challenges and also to seize opportunities. And that's also why the Dutch Economic Network is of importance, and their services and events help with this. And just to end with, events like this are very important, so just keep coming. Thanks for your attention.
Girls, thank you very much for sharing with us this top level insights on the report. I mean, I think we can say that they like webinars, and that's also, we see the number of people attending, so that's cool. But I think they also prefer the fresh Heinekens with the networking events. So I think next time we can present this result during a cocktail in Brazil. But having said that, it's nice to hear as well that we get a really nice positive report on as a feedback towards the services that we provide as a diplomatical network and also as Dutchem. So thank you for that. I mean, that's cool. But overall, they have been very positive, I think, about the overall investment climate and doing business climate here in Brazil. I must admit that the Brazilians in general are always very positive. So let's see also if we can balance that a little bit with maybe the two guests that we have for today, and see a little bit their opinion, because that might be slightly different. In the meantime, because we get also from the chat box the question, will we get the report? Yes, of course, you will get the report with tons of more details and information inside. You will get it afterwards. No worries about that. But let's first maybe, and also in the meantime, if you have other questions, just put it into the chat, guys. I mean, we will pick up your questions. Girls, just let me go through maybe Joris. Joris, not only as the managing director of Atlas, an important company, Dutch company here in Rio, but also our VP for the Dutch Chamber in Rio. You have been here, Joris, for many, many years. I think you're more Brazilian now than Dutch. But how would you see the situation? I mean, maybe a little bit more nuchter, as they say in Dutch, and maybe a little bit less positive, or not, Joris?
Okay, thanks, Peggy. Thanks for having me at this webinar. So, first of all, I also want to express my gratitude to the Netherlands Economic Network, the Embassy, and of course, Dutcham for having me here and to allow me to say a few words. Not quite Brazilian yet, maybe 50-50, right? But a little bit of myself then. My name is Joris Steinberg. I'm a Dutch national, born and raised in the Netherlands. I've been living in Brazil for 16 years, mainly in the city of Rio de Janeiro. I started my time in Brazil with an MBA at Copiage, which is a renowned business school in Rio de Janeiro. And ever having worked at a local consulting firm, I then moved on to my current employer, which is Atlas Professionals, a Dutch manpower company for the offshore energy marine sectors. We have head office in Amsterdam, and I am responsible for the operations in the Americas regions with offices in Brazil and the United States. On Brazil itself, I think we all agree that Brazil is not an easy country to do business. But in terms of a macro view, I think Brazil is a country that has it all. So first of all, Brazil has big proven oil reserves, which are still economically feasible at low prices. It has great potential for renewable energies. 80% of electricity generation in Brazil comes from renewable sources. There's a great potential for wind and solar power, currently with 55 gigawatts of onshore installed capacity and another 180 gigawatt of offshore wind parks being planned. Brazil is full of other resources like iron ore and other minerals. Brazil has a very attractive climate. We already mentioned this, right? Not only for humans, but also for agriculture. So you throw a seed on the ground and it grows. Major products include soybeans, soy oil, sugarcane, coffee, crop-based ethanol, but also beef. And furthermore, Brazil has like 8,000 kilometers of rich coastal areas. So with all of these resources, you might wonder, why is Brazil the richest and wealthiest country in the world, right? And I don't think there's a single straight answer to this, but it's my personal opinion that there are two important factors at play. So first of all, governance and all of the bureaucracy that comes with it. You need to deal with government on 3 different levels: federal, state, and municipal, all with its own legislation, which are sometimes conflicting. So one of the major bottlenecks in Brazil is the tax environment, which is a complaint you hear often from business. Brazil has taxes on all different levels, and this creates quite a burden on the business, not only in terms of taxes paid, but also in terms of resources allocated to handle these taxes correctly. As an example, in a country comparison survey, which was done by one of the big accounting firms, it showed that Brazil ranked last on the list of indicating the numbers of man-hours spent on reporting to the authorities for small and medium enterprises. This went up all to 2,200 man-hours a year, compared to 120 man-hours only in the Netherlands. So there's one big example, or one example of how big the administrative and bureaucratic burden can be. As a second difference with the Netherlands, a major difference, I see the culture. Brazil was colonized by the Europeans, mainly the Portuguese, English, Spanish, but also the Dutch. And these Europeans brought with them a culture of exploration, extracting as much as they could from Brazil and bringing it back to their homelands. I think this set the culture for Brazil, and you still experience traits of this nowadays. Also, there's no real need for long-term planning in order to survive. Like I said, throw a seed on the ground and it grows, so food in abundance. Nor will you freeze to death if you don't have a roof over your head. So in my opinion, these items, amongst others obviously, created a culture focused on the short term. And many Brazilians actually live by the day. Each day is a new day of survival. And if you ask a Brazilian on the street if he wants 100 Brazilian reais today or 200 in a month's time, the majority will choose for the 100 reais today, because that's a guarantee. So that having said, and coming back to the fact that Brazil is a land of enormous opportunities, I think an important lesson can be learned. Don't expect to achieve positive results in the same time frame as you're used to in the Netherlands. I often say it takes you 3 times as long, and it requires 3 times the normal investment and effort. But then when you pull it off, you will see that your return on investment is also way above what you would achieve elsewhere. And I think this is actually what happened for my current employer, Atlas Professionals. Some of the biggest and most successful projects have taken place in Brazil, but they have not gone without sweat and tears. Year after year, we show much higher gross margin percentage than the average of the group. But on the flip side, we also carry a much higher overhead cost. So this is an example of more investments in order to get a higher return on investments. One additional aspect to take into account, which is important to take into account in Brazil, is that it can be quite volatile in terms of economic performance. So while we are used to seeing the Dutch economy grow or shrink a couple of % per year, these fluctuations can be much bigger in Brazil, especially if you look at individual sectors. Some sectors are more robust and show steady growth, But for example, the energy sector has seen massive fluctuations over the last decade. When Brazil's largest company, Petrobras, was hit by a corruption scandal in 2014, this heavily hit the sector. And you need to be able to sit out these downtimes and be ready and prepared for the uptimes. As an example, a real example for my current employer of an uptime, when the COVID crisis hit, the mobility of people was heavily affected. And many Brazilian companies that operate in the offshore energy sector weren't able to bring in their foreign manpower anymore. And they reached out to Atlas in Brazil for local Brazilian manpower. So this represents a massive growth opportunity for our Brazilian team. This just as an example of a possible uptime. I can probably go on for about another half hour, but I know my time is limited. So, and I know it's difficult to portray a complete and detailed view of my opinion in just a few minutes, but nevertheless, I hope this provided some interesting insights to all of you.
I think we're going to book you, Joris, maybe for an additional webinar on how to do business in Brazil and probably attract even more companies, because it has been a very positive speech that you've been giving. So thank you for that.
Thank
Joris,
you.
maybe are you surprised? Because I mean, if I hear you speaking, I would say, hey, but then how does it come that we only have approximately 250 Dutch companies here in such a big country? What do you think that makes Dutch companies hesitate still to come to this country? Should we have, I mean, with the thousands of entrepreneurs that we have in Holland, shouldn't we have much more of them here then?
Yeah, I think so. But at the same time, we compete with other locations, right? Or other countries compete with Brazil. So a Dutch company that's only installed in the Netherlands, looking to broaden its horizon. I don't think Brazil will be the first country you pick. Maybe just first go across the board to Germany or Belgium and see if you can make it work there, which is probably much easier. Are the Dutch companies prepared to invest what is necessary and to sit out to wait for the return on investment? I think, as I mentioned in my speech, I think this is also a big bottleneck, and they might not always be prepared to do so. So I think these items all play an essential role.
Yeah, it's definitely not for beginners, right? Brazil. I see Afke. Please, Afke, feel free to pop in because you also had a question for Joris.
Yeah, I was triggered by your story, Joris. It's very recognizable, and thank you for sharing your ideas. I had one specific question because you were mentioning, of course, the tax environment. Well, as you know, it's a high priority of the government to get the tax reform through Congress and Senate right now. Haddad is, of course, trying to lead this debate, and we know that the intentions are simplification of the overall tax structure, but we also know there's quite a lot of, well, let's call it horse trading to get the proposal through Congress and Senate. So what is your opinion on that, and what are your expectations from this tax reform? If it were to pass Congress and Senate?
Yeah, well, I've participated in a couple of sessions, both online and offline, with specialized firms on that, and to be quite honest, and I don't want to sound pessimistic, but I actually am in that sense. I mean, the idea behind this is to make it more simplified, and the initial idea is good, but then you see all of the discussions, and you have, like I said, municipal, state, and federal levels, and everybody wants to protect his own little kingdom, and then you get all kinds of exceptions, and you start off with a system that is simple, that becomes more and more complicated with all kinds of exceptions. It becomes even more complicated when you need to think about how to transit or migrate this from the old to the new system. So that's probably a period of, I don't know, 10, 20 years, which is even more complicated. And then it remains to be seen in the end if it's really a more simple system. So I have to say, I'm a bit pessimistic about this, but hey, let's hope for the best.
And we need definitely the help of the diplomatical network, right, Joris, to push it.
We're trying our best. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
A clear message, Afke, to you and your team. Rinus, I heard, well, it's not a surprise, of course, that the agribusiness is one of the top, if not the top industry of Brazil, and this is good for the Dutch companies, right? As I already said in the introduction, you're responsible for the Heus, and a quite impressive, nice company here in Brazil. But moreover, you also have been the man also with a very sharp view and vision and outspoken opinion about the situation here in Brazil. So thanks for being with us. Is this for you the same positive vibe and feeling that you have if you look at particularly at your business in the agri?
Well, thank you first of all for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be. I'm always. This is, I think, starting with what Dutch and what the government is doing is bringing us together to share these experiences is what we have to do. And what Joris also said, Brazil is not simple. I can say you say Brazilians are positive. Well, I think my opinion is totally the other way around. They are very, very little positive and proud about what they have. And that's always what I start my story about Brazil with. It's complicated, it's taxes. One thing we didn't raise, but it's big. I mean, the size of this country is, if you want to work country-wise, is tremendous. And then for every country or every state, they have a different tax, which we of course discuss. I agree, I think, with Joris. Already 30 years they are going to improve taxes, but don't count on that too much on the short term. What I can say about Brazil, about 7 years, I went here with an opinion formed by what I hear in Europe or in the rest of the world. And when you are here and working here, this country is a good country to work, live, be proud on, also by themselves. I think you can find good people here, but I also have to say you need them. Because if you don't have them, you are not surviving in this competitive, highly competitive, high-level market. So yeah, of course, I think also what you say, people are positive because we only get answers from the people who are still here. But there is many people who tried and went out. If you talk to them, you get also the confirmation it is complicated. So yeah, I really believe this country, of course, we are in agriculture. It is one of the powerhouses in agriculture in the world. I believe the Huis needs to feed 9 billion people, and every one of us should realize we need Brazil in it. But we also need land, we also need climate. So let's go to sustainability. Also, there is two sides of it, and I think there all the Dutch companies can also help Brazil to explain how green this country is, what they do. And there should be this balance, which I'm always, let's say, talking about. So yes, very positive, but difficult.
Yeah, well, let's say that maybe nothing in life is easy anymore, right, Rinis? So we have to have a little bit of the challenges. Talking about sustainability, because this is obviously also one of the key topics at the Huis. I mean, you're investing a lot of energy and a lot of time and efforts in this with the whole theme. I was a bit surprised, however. I don't know about you. I mean, you see a lot of Dutch companies. They have a sustainability strategy, but when you bring it down to the local market, I was a bit surprised that they only have, let's say, a global strategy on sustainability, and very few only have a local one. Is that a surprise for you?
No, I think no, because sustainability is relatively a new issue in the business environment. I think in Europe there is coming up a lot of law around it, just to show from government side, from banking side as well, that it is important. And I think in agriculture there's two sides. When you are in Holland, you are almost not proud anymore to be in agriculture. And we are working like that to diminish it. But on the other hand, if you move good agriculture to other countries, the sustainability is not helped because productivity goes down. And we are in the middle of it with Brazil and Amazon and production of meat and corn and soya. And we have a corporate goal to as the Huis to feed the world, to help the world, to fight poverty, and to keep the world healthy. And there is a big discussion between, of course, Europe and Brazil about corn, soya, and all the things. I think also there we have to put things in perspective. And we have, of course, the corporate underway, because this is really not so simple if you are in 25 countries, which are Vietnam, which are Africa, which are Brazil, and also Europe. And we also have a local policy in line with our program, which we have for guidance worldwide. But there is still discussions between, for instance, Vietnam, Holland, and Brazil, Holland. But for us, it's a daily point in our agenda. And it starts with awareness in companies. So I can only, let's say, stimulate people to go on with that and to look generally to two sides of the medal of sustainability, because there are many points which are touched by this important subject.
Yeah, and probably also, Rinus, I think we saw that at the beginning of the year during the Dutch Inspire Award Gala, where we presented so many good actions and projects on sustainability from all our Dutch companies. I think it's not only about having, you know, a local strategy. It can be a global strategy, but with local actions. And I think all of them, they have these kind of local actions. Also with the HERS.
I agree. This is I think something which I would like to compliment. I think you and Dutch with is this at exactly Orange Academy. This is what we I think do right now, bringing Brazilian people in touch with Dutch people, because we will not change Dutch to Brazilians, and we will also not change Brazilian to Dutch, but to make them work when they are young and to give them a good feedback also in networking events. I think this is where it all starts with. And well, there's this year the third variation or second, but it's going right. So I think this is the right direction. And I also can only offer, I'm here. I was here, I always say, going here for 5 years, I will never come back to Holland, because I believe in 20 years is better than Holland. But I mean, so this is my personal belief, and I'm open to discuss this, to talk with anyone. But don't think it's easy here. And okay, this is always what you get back from all what you receive in this questionnaire. It's nice, it's good, but people, be aware of long-term adaptation of your people to, and also understanding of Holland about what's really happening in this country in taxes, because it's really complicated. I'm sorry, and we know that.
But then you need to be prepared, and this is also why we have this strong network to help each other, and that's why we also probably need a lot of lawyers and service providers to help us with this, right? To be successful.
Exactly.
Afka, I see you popping in. Any questions for Rinus from your side? Or I see also Paul is
just one question before, of course, we want to also hear the questions from the participants. But I was curious because one of the outcomes of the survey is indeed this: it is a complex country, but as Joris was already saying, if you have the long breath and the willingness to invest, you can be quite successful. And the main competitive factor that makes you successful, what came out of the survey, is quality of products, quality of services. Now that's something we recognize, and we're of course very proud of that. That's what our Dutch businesses are bringing. But I was wondering, how is that in your sector, which is of course a world on its own? How do you see this quality competitive edge in agro business, Rinus?
No, I think, frankly speaking, Brazil is the most difficult country where the HERS has started, and we are active in 25 countries all over the world, and we export to 100. I really, not because I'm here, but it is tough. And that needs the understanding to understand it. But what we have realized here, if you have a good team, the Brazilians are good, and you need a good team, because your competitors, who are in general, in our case, we are more than 10 years here, 11. So we just landed in the experienced company, but I just feel today a little bit at home. And we have a very strong team. Quality of people in Brazil is high. So the difference in our sector between what we do in Europe and Brazil is much smaller than if you go to other countries. So you have a level playing field with very professional, big world players like Cargill, DSM, Trau, we know them all. And yeah, so if you are then coming here after 10 years ago, which seems long, but they are here 30 years, all our customers, potential customers, have already a good supplier. And yeah, so then yeah, you need to be able to bring a certain knowledge which is already high, and you have to find for alternatives to help finally the different big players in this market. And that's why it's in our sector, yeah, of course, agriculture. Everyone knows they are the biggest exporter: soya, corn, beef, meat, poultry. This is not because they are not doing things right. And we also know a lot, but doesn't necessarily mean that we know much more than them. We think different, we have other ideas, and we can motivate them to be more proud of what they do, because that's, if you look to agriculture, they sell too much, in my view, commodities, and they should more be proud of what they do and let the world see that what there is behind of all this production in agro in Brazil. And honestly speaking, if you go to the big 20 companies in Brazil in agro, they are very far with their sustainability planning for the future, and they have to be, because otherwise they can't export. So I think all this makes it a challenging and interesting country where if you are agro, you have to be, because it will only grow. And that's the certainty we have. But we can have 1 year profit, 1 year loss, because of many things that influence this interesting country. And that's where exactly what Joris is saying, it can differ, it takes time. Well, I cannot agree more with him. And this is what you have to be able to stand and to like. But if you are able to get a good organization with good Brazilians, you can survive here, any one of us. And
more than
that's
survive.
the message.
And more than survive.
Exactly.
Yeah, and more than survive.
Thank
If you see the results of the HUS, I mean, I cannot say that it's surviving. I think it's more than surviving. I think it's good results. So that's really nice as well. I look at the time. We're going already a little bit over time. I don't see any additional questions, but maybe I can ask the girls back from the Netherlands if you're still there, and maybe I can also ask Joris and Paul has been hiding. Maybe it's nice for Paul to step in for just 1 second as well. Mr. Paul?
Sure. Thank you so much.
Good morning.
This was a very good morning. And thanks a lot. I think this was, I think, very much what we try to achieve, to have this information not from a general source, but from our own source. And I think the importance of this network for our goals in Brazil cannot be overestimated. I think it's like the presence of Dutch companies is one of our key instruments in Brazil to achieve cooperation and to achieve our sustainability goals. And I think we'll also use it to get more companies to come, so to inform them and say, like, well, this is what the people that went before you have noticed and think about the market. I think is a very strong message, and much stronger than if we just say, this is what we think and this is what we have seen from sort of hearsay. So for me, it's a very powerful instrument. We'll use it as much as we can in the coming years, and then hopefully in a couple of years we'll do it again, just to make sure we're still well informed about what's happening in all the sectors. So thanks a lot, Peggy, and thanks a lot for the speakers. I think it was very enlightening. Thanks.
From mute.
You're muted, Peggy.
Sorry, indeed. I thank you very much, Paul. I saw just the last question popping in, which I think it's an interesting one. Is there still room for marketing amongst Dutch investors and Dutch companies? Obviously, I would say yes. I think there are a lot of things, that we can still do to promote Brazil in a better way. And then the question is also, what would be the target groups? Maybe I can look at Afghan for that one. What should be the target groups? What should be the segments, the industries that we should focus most on?
Yeah, but I'm not sure I understand the question right. Are you talking about Dutch investments in Brazil? Maybe Roberto, could you please elaborate what you mean exactly?
I think I pick it up for
Roberto.
Yes, indeed, because he cannot speak in a webinar.
He cannot answer in a...
I think on Afka, what Roberto is asking is indeed, what kind of, if we have the Dutch companies coming to Brazil, which kind of companies out of which kind of segments should they be? What could be the most interesting segments, let's say, for companies to come to Brazil? We already talked about agri, but there are probably also much more sectors than only agri, right?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Actually, the European Union recently did an analysis together with Apex on the foreign direct investment flows. And what you see from Europe, but also from the Netherlands, is a very high share of energy transition. Not surprisingly, the energy transition sector is the leading one for European investment. But of course, there are many others, a lot of which are also in financial services. The problem always with the Dutch figures is that they're sometimes a bit difficult to distinguish because we have so many financing companies located in Amsterdam. So you always have to look behind the figures. What do they actually say? But it's definitely a separate, very interesting topic to look at. And it's also one that I started during the introduction. The Brazilian government is also asking us, like, what companies could you are interested in investing here, and what do they need to be able to do so? So it's definitely also an area where we're looking into, and as said, the energy transition is leading together with some financial services at the moment.
Yeah, and Joris, I see you looking very severely. Something that you want to add to that?
If I need to name a few sectors, we've named them like agribusiness, the energy sectors. I think for some regions in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, but also maybe the northeast of Brazil is tourism, and another sector I would say is water management, where I see a lot of opportunities in terms of marketing. And maybe it's not maybe the marketing that you're looking for, but in line with Venus's comment, the Brazilians are not marketing themselves enough. They're not proud enough of what they have. And there's a couple of examples that we have with a company like Embraer, it's a Brazilian airplane, right? Most of the business jets in Europe are Embraer. Nobody knows that's a Brazilian airplane, right? And I think Brazil can market itself better with that. Company in the south that produces electrical motors, WEG. Nobody knows this is a Brazilian. If you use one of the utilities that has a little electrical motor in it, big chance it's from a Brazilian company, WEG, right? So I think there's opportunities for Brazilians to market themselves better.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Joris. I see another question, which I think it's a relevant one, and I'm going to claim, guys, a little bit more of your time. I hope I don't have to pay for you extra. But maybe an interesting question. Indeed, the Mercosur, and then probably I'm back to Afke. This is the big thing, right, that is on the table. Will it have an impact? I mean, how do you see that? And specifically on lower tariffs and lowering down the barriers. What's your opinion on that, Afke?
It's a very good question, and we need another seminar for that, I think. But in short, of course, it's one of the big questions on the table right now, the EU-Mercosur trade agreement. Politically, it's not easy, I have to say. That's not a secret, and that's for two reasons. First of all, because in Europe, of course, we've gone through since the 90s, let's say, when we were designing all these trade agreements, the world has changed, but specifically in Europe, the way people are thinking. So in some of the parliaments, including in ours, we have discussions like, how does this work? Do we still want this in this way, etc.? So that means that from Europe, you have this push to raise the bar in terms of sustainability requirements. And if you talk to the Mercosur bloc on that, we're not fully seeing eye to eye there. So that's the first reality, of course, that all the diplomats have to, move across to come to an agreement. The second point that I see that is causing some, difficulties is that the Mercosur bloc as such is not always in agreement on what they want and how on their external trade policy. So like the EU, we're an integrated bloc in terms of trade. The Mercosur bloc is not. So there are quite some different interests as well. It's not a secret that Brazil and Uruguay are not always seeing eye to eye on some topics. So the ambition is it's on the table, and the ambition from both sides is let's see if we can really get somewhere. But it's not easy because of these, mainly these two factors that I have been saying. Of course, it's not in our direct hands. It's between the EU and the Mercosur negotiators right now. But it is on the table, but let's see if we can make it, if we can
it's not
conclude
off the table, right?
No, it's there, but it's not easy.
Okay. No, but thank you very much for your feedback. We have to wrap up a little bit, and I see an interesting question coming from Marcos from ABN AMRO. But Marcos, it's a good question, but it's in fact the one that you have to answer, my dear, during the Orange Academy, because he was willing to ask the question: the water management opportunities. What do you think we have? And this is a very interesting one, but. He has to answer, Joris, that question, so he asked it to you. But he has to answer it because this is one of the questions of the Orange Academy. So I think it was a good try, Marcos, but we're not going to answer the question. You may answer it by the end of the Orange Academy. So guys, I think with this, we come to the end of the webinar. I think we went a little bit over time, but I think vale la pena, as they say here, it was more than worth, I think. Allow me to thank, in the first place, my speakers, Renske, Jaela. Thank you very much for being with us today from the Netherlands. Also, Afke, thank you very much for making some time, and it was really nice to have you with us. Joris, Rinus, as always, thanks for the support. Always good to have also your balance a bit on the study, and thank you as well to Paul, who has been hidden again. But thank you as well for the opportunity of making this this webinar possible. For all the people in the room attending this webinar, thank you very much for being with us today. It was a great pleasure to present these results of the survey. And as I promised, you will get the link with a full report with tons of information about it. Feel free if you have questions afterwards, if you really want to have another chat on with certain people. I mean, we're there. We were very positive on the positive feedback that we got from you on the services that we provide. So keep on giving the feedback to us as well, that we can improve our services and that we can improve as well or continue as well to help you by doing a good business here in Brazil. Have a very nice day to all of you, a nice evening for the people in the Netherlands, and hope to see you very soon at Dutcham. Thank you, guys.